Welcome back to the 13th Destiny podcast with Magnum. I am James Magnum Cook, your host, and today I have on a very, very special guest that I have been trying to get on for a long time, and I'm sure some of you know about her. She's known as the Ghost Biker Miranda Young. Welcome to the show.
Hey James, Magnum, thank you for having me on.
You are very welcome. I am so glad to have you on the show. And I'm going to talk about a lot of things with Miranda today. Her current shows, her stuff at the Scott County Jail, all that. So let's just get the show started. And for anyone that listens to my podcast that may not know who she is, I'll let her give a little bit of background on herself, and then we'll go from there with some questions.
Well, thanks again. I'm glad we were able to get this worked out where we were finally able to meet up. But my name is Miranda Young, and I'm better known as the Ghost Biker. I travel around the country on my Harley-Davidson motorcycle to different haunted and historic locations, and I highlight them on my web series, Ghost Biker Explorations.
And what kind of bike do you have?
I have an 883 Iron. It's a 2010 all blacked out Sportster, and it's kind of a throwback to a late 60s bobber style motorcycle.
Yeah, and I've actually seen her bike in person, and I actually met Miranda in August of 2020. I actually know when I met her at the Harley-Davidson dealership in Florence, Kentucky. See, I even know the exact time we met. That's right. And I keep up with that kind of stuff. And I talked to her briefly about being on the show back then. I had not started it then. So how far back do you go? I'm pretty sure it goes back to your childhood, if I'm not mistaken, if I've researched my stuff correctly about how you've been interested in ghosts and everything ever since you were a child. Correct?
I have. I didn't grow up in a haunted house or anything like that, but I definitely had an interest in it ever since I was a child. My interest actually stems from more of the storytelling side. My grandmother, she would always tell me stories about growing up in the Appalachian Mountains and different haunts or haints, as she always called them, and a lot of local folklore. My dad, he also shared a lot of stories. He would take me back roads riding, and he would tell me about the old communities and towns and how they used to be when he was younger. And so that's where I really got an interest in the paranormal, was from those stories. But I like to take it from a historical perspective as well as the storytelling side of things. And and I had an amazing librarian growing up in elementary school. She often shared different stories of different things, that had occurred in the area. And then about 15 years ago, I was approached by a founder of a team. He saw my background in photography as well as design, and he reached out to me and wanted me to look at some photography, some photos that they had taken on different investigations. And so the goal was for me to look at these images and try to debunk or explain some of the things they had captured on some of their investigations.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and so essentially one photo turned into two turned into 10, and 10 turned into about 50 photos. And then I was invited to, in order to kind of pay me back for looking at those photos, they invited me to go on an investigation.
Okay.
And my first investigation was at a local bar and marina in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And so I investigated with the two co-founders and myself, and it was a very active night. And essentially from that point, I was bit by the bug. And,
I like that, bit by the bug.
Exactly, or taken by the spirit.
That's even better. I like that. I like that too. That's neat, considering what we're talking about. That's
absolutely
neat. Yes.
So I ended up joining the team, and I was a member of the team for about 8 years until I started Ghost Biker Explorations.
Awesome. And Ghost Biker has done really, really well for you, correct? Yeah.
It has. It's really taken off a lot quicker and a lot faster than I had expected it to. I found that while I was with the team, we would essentially investigate somewhere about every month. we would either do some type of commercial location or maybe a residential. We did a lot of residential cases. And so when I wasn't investigating with the team, I ended up kind of going out on my own and riding my motorcycle to these different locations, really more urbex or urban exploring type locations. And I was highlighting all of those on my website. And they were really starting to get a lot of attention, people saying, what's the story behind these places?
Right.
And, is it haunted? What's the significance? And so I really started thinking, why not document this through video rather than photography? And that's really how Ghost Biker was born.
Yeah, and I found you, I think I told you, I found you kind of accidentally originally because I was looking at some photography stuff that I was doing, some stuff that I was doing. And of course, I've had a little interest, I've told you, in paranormal stuff, being a former private investigator. And I found that there's a lot of there's some similarities and there's some things that are just totally different, which I've mentioned on one of my previous shows. But I found you by accident. I come across YouTube and I go, wow, this is interesting. Wow, this is so neat. And I think I found it so neat too because of, like you say, and I've heard you say it too, about that you were told being a girl on the bike and going out and stuff. And it was fascinating because I think that's the reason that I've noticed that you have a following of young to old, just to pretty much just about across the board as far as age goes. I mean, you have a really interesting following of people. So
I do. With my background being in photography and marketing, I really put a lot of thought into how I was going to structure Ghost Biker. And so, a lot of people, they don't, if they love history, they may not like the paranormal. And then there's others that are just into the paranormal and they don't really get into the history as much. And so what I really wanted to do was I wanted to do shorter style episodes, anything from 20 to 40 minutes, because the average person's attention span is around 20 minutes. And so I wanted to do something that covered a lot of the history because I wanted people to know the story as to why I was there. I also wanted to cover information about the town, to cover kind of the travel aspect as far as being a biker, and then cover the investigation. Even if I didn't get paranormal activity, I still wanted to cover that location because I wanted to pick places that had an interesting enough story to share that even if we didn't get activity, people would still be interested. And if you get the activity, it's really just icing on the cake.
Right.
And so, it's really worked out well for me because a lot of the people who watch, my demographics are either history buffs, paranormal enthusiasts, or bikers. And bikers makes up my largest demographic. And so
that would make sense.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, so I really try to have a little something for everybody, but really make sure that I cover the history side of things, just because you wouldn't have the paranormal activity if you didn't have the historical narrative to go with it.
And I know when I met you, you were at, like I say, you were at an event at a Harley-Davidson dealership, and there are a lot of bikers, and I swear I turned my phone off, and I hid my phone, and we seemed to, I'm just going to leave it in the show because obviously I don't know why, but we'll have a little talk about how we think that someone's in this jail turning my phone back on because I literally had it dark. And it's come back on. That Miranda, you saw me. It was dark.
I did.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we apparently may be having some activity here right now, which that was not planned, I assure you, because I showed her that I turned it off because I learned from my first show not to do that. But we're going to leave it in because it's working out this time. So I did not.
And if people don't know, we are actually on location.
Yes.
At a haunted location here. Which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. So if we have anything, that is not uncommon to have technical difficulties here.
Well, I came to the right place. If I was going to interview a paranormal investigator, I should have come to a place of activity. I definitely did that. Okay, wow. Okay, so you mentioned that you were on the team, and I believe my notes say you were on that team from 2013 to 2018,
Yes.
and then you ventured out on your own. And like I said, back to your demographics before we were interrupted by the ghost, or whatever the activity was there. Bikers obviously were a big part of your event that I came to, but there was all kinds of other people that came to your event as well. I recognized that, and it was very interesting. And I put a lot out the day that I was there, and I was like, she is so fascinating. I mean, I had found you very fascinating just looking online and seeing the stuff on there, but to meet you in person. And by the way, if you don't know, she is very talented, very well spoken, as you can tell, and she's actually very beautiful too. So.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, so she's well rounded. So yeah, so you should really want to meet her. Whether you're just not into paranormal or his history or whatever, but she's a very interesting person. But anyway, moving on. So I just want to get that out of the way.
Thank you, James.
You're welcome. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and tell them where we're at. We're in the Scott County Jail here in Scott County, Tennessee. This is an area where she's from, and I'll let her give you a little history on this jail as she gave me today, because I think I'm going to mention a lot about this jail on the stuff I write up as well. And so it's just not just strictly paranormal stuff that she does. There's some stuff related to this jail, but there's some other stuff related to the history and the town, and I think it's very important that I put that out there as well.
Absolutely. So as I said, I've been doing Ghost Biker since 2018, and I've actually met some of my best friends through the paranormal. And so one of my friends, Dr. Kris Sumner, she is with Soul Sisters Paranormal, and so we came together about 2 years ago, and we had decided that we wanted to create a business known as History, Highways, and Haunts, LLC. And so we created this business to be able to share a passion of the history as well as the paranormal, and myself being a biker, incorporating that travel and the highways part into it. So we had this business plan together, and we really got to talking about this location here in Scott County, Tennessee. Which is actually Huntsville, Tennessee, and which is the area that I'm from. And there's this jail. It was built in 1904, and it was in operation until 2005. And it ended up sitting vacant until currently here in 2021. In 2017, they got a tourism grant to fix it up and remodel it. And it continued to still sit vacant up until now. And so we ended up approaching the town of Huntsville with a business plan to see if they would allow us to open it for a history museum, as well, sort of like a crime and punishment museum, as well as opening for paranormal research. So we got a business plan together, and back 10 weeks ago, September 4th, we ended up opening. We've got a lot of historical artifacts and articles and such from the Scott County area throughout the entire jail. We really wanted to keep it very original to how it was originally set up. But we have that, as well as a law enforcement appreciation area, and we have teams in all the time conducting paranormal research.
Yeah, and I took a tour with her today, and it's a very interesting place, and you definitely have to come check this place out. I will definitely have some links to it at the end of this show once I put it up and everything, and you can also check out on what I'm going to write up on TripAdvisor at the Magnum 968, which is my TripAdvisor, which I'm going to write about this as well. And speaking of that, it's not the easiest thing in the world, as you and I have talked about earlier, to get that because of where we're located at in the Bible Belt, as you were mentioning, and we know that. I mean, I'm in Bowling Green, Kentucky. I'm not that far from you, and I get that. But I think you presented it in such a great way that you really got their attention, and I think this is going to be. It's really neat already, but I see so much that you've got planned for this. This is going to be a really good place for anyone that's interested in either one of these things, either historically or paranormal, to come to. So, I mean, if you're not interested in paranormal and you're interested in history, or if you're interested in both, any of those three categories are going to be great to come visit this place. I can tell you that right now. And it's already amazing. just what they've got so far, but I see it being potentially a whole lot better as they go along, and they got some plans. I'm not going to tell you all their plans. So, you got to come over here and take a tour. Got to come here. Same reason that today I only took a few pictures, because they're not a well-established place yet, and I want to make sure that I don't put too much out there for them. So I'll put out as much as I can to present for them, but I held back on what I did. Like, established museums have been around for a while. Sometimes I'll take more pictures, but they've got a constant flow. Today I was like, they don't have a constant flow yet, so I want to try to help that out and just whet the appetite a little bit. Okay, let me make sure to see what else I've got to ask you about. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you about. So I recently watched one of your episodes recently, and so tell me about this Grand Old Lady thing.
Yeah,
that was an interesting episode.
The Grand Old Lady is actually one of my new absolute favorite locations to investigate, just because the activity was quite intriguing. So this location, it was built in 1908, and it was a hotel that was driven by the railroad system, and so it's up in the mountains of Balsam, North Carolina. And whenever people would come in to visit the hotel, they would ride the train in, and they would come and spend their summers there. And so the hotel has a little over 100 rooms, but currently at this time, because they have combined some of the rooms, they're all unique. There's 58 rooms, and they're still very rustic. They don't have television sets in them, and they're just very time appropriate to the early 1900s. And so they are a full functioning hotel, but they do close down during the wintertime. Typically from November to February was when they would close. I think that due to COVID, they were closed a little bit longer when I was there. But they do rent the rooms out, or the hotel out, during their close time for paranormal investigators. And it's really cool because they're very welcoming and open to their spiritual activity that they have there. And they actually, every time they get documented activity in each room that has activity, they will actually put a welcome sign over the door. So whenever you're walking through the hotel and you see a welcome sign over the door, you know that that's a room that's had activity.
Right, which is something I found very interesting while I was watching your episode. And also the fact that they put the books for the guests to write about activity. That's not something that I had normally thought that someone would do but apparently they're going with it, and I like that. And I did not know about any of that until I saw your episode. Believe it or not, I was like, oh.
It's actually a quite the hidden gem, because a lot of people, and I think that's part of their struggle, is the fact that they are located there in the mountains. When the railroad system closed down, they lost a lot of traffic to their location because the train track wasn't going through there. It's a pretty desolate town, honestly. There's not a whole lot in that area except for mountain hiking, mountain biking, and whitewater rafting, that sort of thing.
And not all those people are normally necessary. I mean, there may be some, because you and I do a lot of different stuff. But a lot of those people may not be into the paranormal or stuff like that, or even thinking about staying at that location. And then, of course, we have some people that are a little scared.
Exactly.
I mean, not everybody can go out and do what you do.
That's true.
And I'm not going to give away too much from the episode of the one, but I found the flash. I'm not going to tell them. I'm going to whet their appetite. I found the flashlight stuff very interesting. So you're going to have to watch the episode. Check out the episode. So it's really that was fascinating.
It's episode 1 of season 3. And I'll just say, as far as the activity, they did have a homicide that took place there. It did not take place in the hotel. It actually took place over the hillside at the depot from the hotel. There was a sheriff that was shot, and they did bring his body up to the hotel and prepare it for, they weren't able to save him, so they did prepare it for burial up there. And so there is a particular room where they had taken his body that does have activity. And there's also a hallway there known as Henry's Hall that's very active. As far as disembodied voices, between disembodied voices and EVPs, that location has had some of the most active disembodied voices that I've ever encountered.
Wow. That's interesting. And I mentioned this to you off the podcast. I was going to talk to you about the West Coast co-host I had that had a story about something. And we are in the Bible Belt, and we both talked about that you're a woman of faith. I'm a person of faith too, although some people sometimes find that hard to believe. But my father was actually a minister, so people that know me locally, they know that whole story, but other people don't. But she had this particular thing that she talked about on the show, and I was fascinated by it, and then I saw your show with the flashlight and the activity, and then I've heard you talk about some other stuff. So she said, and this is something that she said happened when she was a kid, she said that she was literally picked up off the bed. Have you ever heard of this particular type of stuff happening? And what I'm going to bring to you is about, it dropped her because she had talked about she was going to say her prayers, but she got in the bed and she didn't, and then when she said, she asked her, like, in the name of Jesus, please, and it just drops her. Mm-hmm. Have you ever experienced anything like that?
Personally, I have not. However,
have you heard of it, though?
I have heard of that, yes.
Okay.
I've heard of that on several occasions, that people have either shared stories with me where they have actually witnessed seeing somebody levitating, or that they have had that encounter themselves. Right. And 2 particular instances come to mind, and they did call on the name of Jesus when that happened. It was almost like they were in a sleep paralysis state, so they couldn't move their body, but they said, within inside themselves, they did call on the name of Jesus, and it disrupted the levitation.
Okay.
The other instance that I'm thinking of, where a lady had witnessed her son levitating, she said he virtually seemed unconscious, and that he was unaware of what was happening. But she just happened to hear a noise. She went up there and she looked in, and she said she actually saw him levitating about 3 feet off the bed. Right.
And something else I remembered from being at your event, because somebody asked you a question about something about, I think, the demonic stuff, and you were like, you don't ever try to, like, bring forth anything like that, because that's not something that you would want to do because of your faith. Mm-hmm. And you try to avoid something that but there are things that have happened, obviously, to some people that maybe didn't think through that.
And that's one of the things that I feel like TV and paranormal entertainment shows have sort of done a disservice to the actual field of paranormal. There are, from my belief system, I do believe there are demons out there. I do believe that there are negative entities that maybe once were not human. However, I don't believe we encounter those as much as what people think. A lot of the time people are more afraid of what they don't understand.
Right.
And so most of the time the things we're encountering are spirits and are not demons, and sometimes we encounter angels. But more likely than not, we are experiencing either energy or something that is more spiritual in nature. Now, you do have to be careful, because you never know what you're going to encounter whenever you go looking for it. As for myself, inside of paranormal, you do have different people who specialize in different types of fields of study.
Okay.
Some may study more poltergeist type of activities. Some may study more demonology and angels, that sort of thing. And then you have those, like as myself, I tend to go for the more historical side of things. When I go to a location, I look for somewhere that has a really cool local legend or a really cool historical story that goes with it. And then I go and I try to see if I can definitely share that story, and then also go and see if I can validate it. On a particular instance, which we do cover in Season 1 and Season 2, I was investigating a local story from the Charleston, Tennessee area, which was about a phantom monk. And I hope you guys will go and watch it, but just the kind of the brief part of the story is that essentially in the 1860s there was a flood. There was a train coming down from the Maryland area, and it ended up derailing during that flood in Chattanooga and Charleston. And so there was a train wreck, and there were a lot of people who were injured. The homes within that area ended up taking those bodies in, and the local doctor would go to those homes, treat those people who had either perished or who were injured in the accident. And there was a monk who was on that train. And so it's said that the doctor took the monk's body back to his practice, and he ended up putting it in a tub, dissolving the skin from the bones. And he did this, he did this because apparently at that time it was really important for a doctor to have a skeleton in his office. And so he had used those bones supposedly as his skeleton.
Oh, wow.
And he believed that because the guy was a monk, that essentially no one would be looking for him. So I was able to investigate this train wreck site in Charleston, and then I found access to a family who had purchased a tub from this particular doctor's estate sale, and they believed this was the alleged tub. And so they allowed me to go to the house where they had this tub stored. The house was an abandoned home. Well, when I say abandoned, it was an unlived-in home.
Okay.
The original owner still owned it.
Right.
But it had been unlived in for about 12 years. And so she allowed me to go in and investigate the tub. As I was investigating and filming the tub for episode 2 of season 1, I was getting so much activity that was going on the second floor. Every time we would go to do something, we would hear sounds that sounded like somebody dragging something across the floor, sounds of things being thrown up against the wall. It sounded like a party was going on upstairs.
Oh, wow.
And so
I haven't seen this. How can I go back and check this myself?
yes, it actually turned into a year-long case study for me. We did find that there were 5 spirits inside the home, and it became...
Yeah. Okay, we're just going to deal with this. It's funny that each time that we were talking about something more active is when this is happening, too. This is not planned. I assure you it was not planned whatsoever, because I literally like I said, I turned the phone off. I showed Miranda I had the phone turned off. Oh, my goodness. They are really, your jail's really active, I got to tell you, all of a sudden. And it's when you're talking about the good stuff. But anyway, finish up on the story.
And so essentially, this house ended up becoming a year-long case study for
Okay.
me. And we did end up, the homeowners allowed me to go in for about a full year and try different techniques, different types of tools, and see what kind of activity. We did find that there were 5 spirits in the home, and we did find that 2 of them were a more negative type spirit. And so I ended up reaching out to a demonologist friend of mine who did come in.
Oh, wow.
I don't cleanse houses. I don't remove spirits.
You don't deal with that.
I don't
Yes.
deal with
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
I call in somebody else who has.
Is that partly because of your faith, too? Because you don't want to deal with that because it's just something that you don't want to...
part of it. I mean,
Yeah.
personally.
I mean, I think my faith, I wouldn't really want to deal with that.
No. I mean, I don't believe that I'm qualified
Right.
to be able to remove something. And that is because of my faith.
Okay,
And
yeah.
so, and plus, when you start dealing with these residential cases, they're a whole different beast than dealing with some case like this jail here.
Okay.
When someone comes to the jail, they essentially, they come and they're conducting research on the activity we have. When you're dealing with a residential, you tend to become this person's lifeline in a way. A lot of the time, the people are scared. A lot of the time, they're having to coexist with something that's inside of their house. And so...
and you said that it had been, nobody in there for, about 12 years or
12
something?
years,
Okay.
yeah. And so we did find out some interesting history on the house, but I did call in demonologist Leon Wilkes, and I worked with him. I was actually honored to be able to film the exorcism of the house. Most of the time they don't allow you to do that, but because...
Yeah, I was going to say, that's not normally something that's allowed.
And I had to be very careful how we edited the episode and how I put it out there.
Okay.
And so they did allow us to do that and showcase it. So people can actually go, if they tune into seasons 1 and 2, they can see the story of the monk. They can also see the story of this house and how it progressed from the beginning when we started capturing things up until the home liberation, or essentially the home exorcism of the house.
Yeah, I got to get back and watch that episode because this one I haven't had. Of course, I have a really busy schedule, and of course, when I met you, and I've tried to catch up, but every time I try to catch up, I was either busy working or doing stuff. I'm a little bit less working now because I'm working for myself now,
well, and something I will add to this, where I did used to be a member of a team, I'm actually a solo investigator. So as far as Ghost Biker explorations, it's either just myself at these locations or it's myself and a videographer. I like to keep it really small and keep it to where, I can really control the situation a little bit more by being able to, who's on the property.
Right,
You're able to
right.
control for light pollution, outside noise contamination, and then just how many people are there. So I do collaborations, but for the most part, when you're watching my episodes, it's just myself and a videographer.
And I found that one of the most fascinating things, especially when you were talking about doing it by yourself. That was so cool. It was just like, she's going out there riding her bike, going out there, and hey, she's doing this by herself a lot of times. That's pretty interesting. I mean, I go across the whole country in a car. That's one thing, but I'm in a car. Okay, you're on a bike. That is just, I don't know. I just find it so fascinating, and I think a lot of your fans do.
Thank you. And it's really a blessing to be able to combine these passions, and
right.
To be able to add the paranormal with being a motorcyclist, and being able to really highlight that and do these Harley Davidson events and stuff. I'm really able to take the paranormal and reach a different audience, kind of more of a mainstream audience.
Right, because not all the people that ride Harleys are into the paranormal until Miranda shows up, and then she's at an event, and there's people coming into the Harley Davidson dealership, and they're like, well, hey, who's this girl? Hey, what's this all about?
Well, and it's interesting because a lot of people, they'll tell me, they're like, they may not believe in the paranormal, but they'll say, let me tell you about this strange thing I experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And being bikers, we're always out on the road. And, I started something 2 years ago with this where I host haunted motorcycle rides.
All right. That's neat. See?
Yeah. And so I actually really tell people, I like to challenge them by saying, take a map and close your eyes and touch anywhere on that map. I guarantee you the place where you touch, you're going to find some type of interesting either local story or haunting story that is either local to that area or maybe it's nationally known, but I can guarantee you that anywhere you touch, you're going to find somewhere that has a story. And so it's not necessarily for the biker, it's not necessarily about the destination as much as it is about the journey there. And so all of these little towns and places that we ride through, especially here in, East Tennessee and Kentucky and North Carolina, especially in these places that have these great back roads, every place you're going through, those towns have some type of story about its beginning or something that happened there. And so my goal with that, when I'm doing these haunted rides, is I pick the route and then I release a video that talks about the different hauntings or stories that are in those areas that we're going to be passing through.
And I totally believe that because, like I said, I usually travel in my car, but I have been in the back roads of Kentucky, and there are some really weird things that you just, did I say something or did I hear something? Or I've been out in some like really small places, just got out, and it's just like, okay, well, you just get this, you either get this weird feeling or you hear something weird. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think we have a lot of activity like that around in these parts because of the smaller towns and things that have just kind of disappeared. And but you still got roads that go through them to other places. But people just, on a daily basis, a lot, unlike you or like me, a lot of people just don't never stop at them. They just like,
Yeah, I mean, especially around here. So an example of that is, you have Helenwood, Tennessee, which is just out from here, spelled like Helen and Wood.
Mm-hmm.
But it got its name because of a dynamite explosion that happened in the area. It was very devastating.
Oh, wow.
It created a large fire, and they said it looked like hell in the woods.
So that's how it's got named.
It got the name Helenwood from it. And so, there's a lot of activity from that, and a lot of the small towns just in this area going on up into Kentucky around the Jellicoe area and all that, a lot of those places started out as coal mining towns.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you have a coal mining town, a lot of the time you have coal mining disasters.
Right.
And so It's not uncommon to find stories of these either little abandoned towns or little towns that are kind of like a ghost of what they originally were, that essentially started out and, had all this activity, or people activity living there, that's now, because of some type of devastating event, it's no longer what it was.
Yeah, and there's a lot of those places, especially in eastern Tennessee and eastern Kentucky, that's very much the case. Which we have somebody that has been on the show that does like abandoned places and stuff, and they go to those places for that part of it. But there's a story there too, and you're doing stuff that's story for what you do. Something I want to ask you about. You have a lot of equipment that you use on this. What is some of the equipment that you use, and what exactly, can you kind of give a brief explanation of that equipment and what it's used for?
Sure. So I do have to really be careful how I pack, since I am on the motorcycle, and I
Yeah,
do
that's
have
what I was wondering. Yeah.
Exactly. I do have a ton of equipment, but I actually have a kind of like a little military drop bag that I always take with me. I actually really like to use my dowsing rods, which a lot of you may know them more as witching rods, because back in the early 1900s, late 1800s, people used to use those. They're copper rods, and people would use them to find water. People also use like a willow tree or that sort of thing to find water. It's really good in spiritual communication because they're very simple. A lot of the spirits we communicate with, they are very knowledgeable of what these tools are. So it's not like you're asking them to essentially touch a flashlight or touch a tool.
Okay.
When you tell them to touch the light, a lot of these spirits, they may think of like candlelight, and may not want to touch it. They may not understand the tool.
Okay, I
When
got
you're
you.
asking them to touch a dowsing rod, again, they know it, they're familiar with it. Plus, you don't have to worry about battery drain. So it's a very simple tool. So I really like to use those all the time. The other tool is called an EDI Plus tool, and I'm very scientific minded, and I really, when I'm in a location, I like to know I like to map the temperature, the pressure, humidity, all of that, and all of that is in this one box. In real time, you can see if there's temperature changes, pressure changes. You can also, it has a built-in EMF detector on it, so if there are changes in the magnetic frequency in the room, you can see it in real time.
Okay.
It also has a geophone on there which picks up vibrations, and so I always have that tool with me.
Okay.
And then of course you have your other meters like the K2 meter, which picks up electromagnetic frequencies. Spirits will use that to communicate. A REM pod. This is the one, if you watch my episodes, it's the louder tool.
Okay.
And I like to use it as a proximity meter. I like to use it as a proximity meter because you can set it in an area. If there's a temperature change or if there is an EMF change, it will sound off an alarm.
Okay.
And another one of my favorite tools is an SB7, which is a spirit box. And the theory behind this is it's a modified AM/FM radio, and it has a sweep rate on it. So you can change where it either sweeps forward or sweeps backward, and it will sweep in different milliseconds. And so the theory is that the spirits will use the white noise to communicate, and as it's sweeping across the stations, you can go back and you can actually look and see how that sweep rate with the audio waves, see if it goes through the sweep or if it goes through broadband. And you'll sometimes receive full sentences and such. Yeah. And so...
See, I'm learning something new here. I didn't realize how that works. That's what I wanted to know.
Exactly. And so sometimes you pick up radio stations, sometimes you pick up spirit communication. And for me, I like to go back and I like to look at the audio waves to see how it's broadcasting.
Okay.
But that's a good tool. The Ovilus, it's a word bank, and so the spirits will use the energy from that to use the word bank to get words. So it's really interesting, and different tools work better in different areas.
Right. So, one of the things that I'm getting here towards the end of the show a little bit, I had mentioned to you on one of my shows that I didn't have a lot of activity. My former girlfriend, she had this thing that I talked about, and it was a pretty long broadcast. The only thing, and I was talking to you about that earlier, about this thing that happened with me where I used to work in this distribution center, but that was like a full sentence, and I don't understand how I was getting communicated with when I wasn't trying to get communicated with this person. And there was a lot of other, well, to me, I don't know for sure, but I mentioned I think it sounded like a female voice.
And that's the thing a lot of people don't realize is that spirit communication actually happens a lot more than people realize.
Oh, okay.
I think, because people will ask me, they're like, oh, well, why do we typically only hear from spirits at night or hear from them from a certain century or whatever? And that's not always the case. I think that a lot of the time we're so busy and so wrapped up that we don't really listen and pay attention. And a lot of the time we're in type of situations where people, like when you said there at the distribution center.
And I was completely alone that night.
Yeah, you may be busy and doing things,
Exactly.
and there may be other people around.
Oh, yeah.
But stuff is happening. You just had the opportunity where it was quieter and you were alone. So I think it happens a lot more than what people realize.
And another thing that happened there, and I kept getting told this, and I mentioned this on that particular episode of Talk. I kept getting told about this elevator that's only had 2 floors there, and there was a lady in the call center there, and she kept telling me this elevator is going up and down by itself. Open. I said, I'm not seeing this. And I was talking to her literally one night, and she goes, oh, did you not just see that? And I was like, yeah, I just saw that. I said, that's the first time I've seen it. You've told me like 50 times probably that this has happened. And then all of a sudden, it was me, her, I think her boyfriend, and maybe one other person was up there. And I'm just standing there talking to her, getting ready to go downstairs. And I go, wow. Okay, there's nobody around that should have. I was like, okay, so it does happen. Hello.
It does, and that's actually something that we have happen here at the jail.
Right.
We actually have, so we have a elevator here. It's not been in service since 2005. And we had different people who were former jailers here, and they said that they would actually get calls,
right.
And they would think that people were out. They would hear stuff on the stairwell. They would also hear the elevator going up and down, and when nobody was using it.
Well, there you go. So that does happen. All right. I think I've asked you most of the stuff I wanted to ask you about today. Do you have anything you'd like to mention about the jail or your show or anything coming up that you're doing?
Yeah. So we actually are just in the process of wrapping up season 4, and that I am going to be having a season finale. Typically, my season drops during the month of October.
Okay.
But because I've been so busy with the jail, it's been extended. So here within the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be releasing the season finale of season 4. But people can go back and they can watch all 4 seasons on either the Ghost Biker Explorations Facebook page, YouTube channel, or www.ghostbikerexplorations.com. They can follow my photography under Runaway Vixen on Instagram. On my website, they can follow the photography. They can follow, I'm also an artist. They can see my drawings there.
Yeah, she's very, very good.
Thank you. I do draw.
I actually bought one of your drawings, as a matter of
right.
fact, because I liked your drawing.
That's right. I've actually got about 5 new drawings that are going to be coming out.
Awesome.
I like to draw the different locations that I visit. So those will be coming out soon. So people can go. I'm very active on Facebook. We do a lot of lives. I like to really interact with the people who follow the show on there. I would also, like to invite everyone to come and check out the jail here in Huntsville.
Absolutely. It is awesome. I agree with that.
And so I'm here. My business partner, Dr. Kris Sumner, she's here too. And so you can come out and meet us. We'll give you a tour of the jail. But if you want to
And they're both paranormal investigators, by the way. They
That's
are
right.
both paranormal. If you don't know that, they're both paranormal.
So if you want to find out more information on that, we are active on Facebook under Historic Scott County Jail. You can also see our website, which is www.historicscottcojail.com. And then we do have paranormal investigations, and we also have public investigations where people can ghost hunt with Dr. Christie and I. So
that sounds really cool, doesn't it? Do you have to learn how to ride the bike?
No. For those, you don't. You don't. Yeah, we welcome everyone to come out.
Miranda would have to teach me how to ride the bike because I'll have to be honest with her, I'm not a biker. My dad never wanted me to ride one. He said with the way I drove cars, he said, you'll get killed the first week. Is what he used to tell me.
Yep.
Knock on wood, it's been a long time since I've had an accident. I used to speed a lot. I think that's why he said that. Yeah. But anyway, sorry about that, Miranda. I just thought I'd throw that in there.
No, that's fine. That's fine. So we definitely invite people to come and check that out. So
that's cool.
Definitely check out Ghost Biker Explorations and check out the historic Scott County Jail.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I have had a great time having you on the show today. I am so glad we finally got to do this show. And please check out all the stuff that she mentioned. And if you ever get a chance to meet the Ghost Biker Miranda Young, let me tell you, she is a very interesting young lady, and I really like her. So
Thank you,
I'm so glad to have her on the show. So everyone, thank you for listening to the 13th Destiny podcast with Magnum. I am your host, James Magnum Cook, and I just want to say goodbye and God bless all of you.